What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Heel Deal Podcast. You're back with your hosts, Ben and Zach. Zach, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good, man. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Pretty boring weekend. Didn't have any UNC football to look forward to, but, man, a lot of stuff happened in the ACC. A lot of stuff happened in all the other conferences, too. It's still fun to watch.
All right, yeah, the bye week blues for us, but you're right. A lot of good football on this weekend, so it was entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got a good one for you this time, folks. Since we obviously don't have any game to recap from this weekend, we're going to talk about Virginia Tech, the Virginia Tech preview, and then a little bit of like a back and forth second half of the season predictions for us. See, how we might do on face value for these next 6 games that we have. So why don't we get right into it? We're going to have the rundown as always. So since we last recorded, which was actually last Monday, so 6 days ago, men's soccer has played West Virginia and Syracuse. They beat West Virginia and lost to Syracuse 3-4. So they're sitting at 7-3-2 overall on the season. Still pretty respectable. Women's field hockey has continued their dominance. They're sitting at 12-0, which is just kind of wild. They've played games against Syracuse. They won 3-1, and then Albany. They've won 4-1. So again, it's just they haven't given up more than one goal since September 6th, so 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Wow. Pretty crazy. And then finally, women's soccer, they're dominating still. They're 12-1-1 overall with wins over or a tie at Duke. They tied 0-0 in double overtime, so probably not the most entertaining game to sit through. And they beat Pitt 3-1. So they are doing awesome right now. Pretty sure they're top 5 in the rankings. So
that'd be so anticlimactic, right? You sit there for 2 overtime periods and it ends in 0-0.
Yeah, who decided that 2 overtimes is where they stop? That's just, I don't know.
If you're gonna play that long, just let somebody play till they win. You know?
Yeah, you got to go golden goal. It's the American way. But anyway, like I said, since we don't have anything to recap, we can just recap, the practices they had or something. I'm just glad they're getting healthy, you know?
Yeah. I mean, anytime you get a bye week this time of year, kind of towards the middle of the season, it's good for that reason, right? You want to take the time to rest up and let any injuries you have from the first half of the season kind of rehabilitate and get ready for the long haul of the second half.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we've been hit with the injury bug, no doubt, on offense, but especially on defense. And I mean, I'm looking at this tweet right now. This is the UNC secondary at the beginning of last season and where they are right now. So we have KJ Sales, who transferred. Cameron Kelly's injured with a knee. Patrice Renee is injured with a knee. Bryson Richardson injured his Achilles. Yep. Miles Woolfolk is out indefinitely with a lower body injury. Corey Bell changed his position, and C.J. Cotman medically retired. That's 7 people right there, formerly of our secondary, who are transferred, retired, or injured right now.
Yeah, I know. That's pretty beat up right there.
Yeah,
I had not seen that full list, but that really puts it into perspective just how hard it has been on that group to maintain any kind of success.
Yeah, absolutely. But, I mean, it just makes it more and more surprising how well they hung with other teams, especially Clemson.
Yeah.
I still dream about that game and us rushing the field in an alternate reality.
What could have been, right? But I think we had Cameron Kelly for that game, but maybe outside of him, all those injuries that you just talked about were
we definitely had Kelly for that game.
But yeah, still, I mean, that's just one other guy. That still leaves 6 guys that we didn't have for that game and the other games really that we thought we might have at one point. So that's tough.
Yeah, so hopefully we get word about Miles Woolfolk at some point. He's tied for the league lead or the conference lead in interceptions at 3, despite missing the last 3 games. So
yeah, when you get 2 in one game to start the year, that helps with that a little bit, right?
Yeah, exactly. So why don't we get straight into it and talk to me about Virginia Tech and how you're feeling about this game being played in Blacksburg next weekend.
Yeah, well, first thing we talk about, and I touched on this last week, is that playing in Blacksburg is a tough venue. Mm-hmm. It's always hard to play there. Everyone always talks about how the environment is always pretty loud. The fans are really passionate about the team, so it's a tough place to win at. Period. I mean, no matter how good the team is, the fan base, at least for big games, and I consider this kind of a big game, show out and they really come out there and they support the Hokies. So it's going to be a tough road test for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Virginia Tech is definitely a good team. They're sitting at 1-2 in the conference. let's see, they handled Miami in that was the week before last. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They beat Miami 42-35 after getting walloped by Duke 45-10. So this is a team that can go hot and cold, obviously, and hopefully we catch them when they're cold. But at home, I wouldn't count on that.
It's harder to catch them cold at home, and they've come off they are coming off 2 straight wins now. They beat Rhode Island yesterday, and as you touched on, they beat Miami, who is, as we know, an up-and-down team by themselves, but, they're a very serviceable roster nonetheless. So it's a big win. They won at Miami, too, scored 42 points doing it. And early in the season, and we'll talk about this more, and really all the time when you're talking about Virginia Tech, the narrative is the offense is the one that struggles, and it's the one that keeps the team down. It's the defense that always seems to be the strength of the team. So the fact that they're able to put 42 up on the road, that shows that the offense is progressing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What are some of their key pieces on the offensive side of the ball that we need to keep in mind?
Well, it's been kind of an evolution story for Virginia Tech's offense this year. Last year they had Josh Jackson at quarterback, and then he transfers to Maryland, leaves them kind of in the dust, and then they're left with Ryan Willis, who was a very serviceable player, played against us in the game last year that we went to when they came to Chapel Hill that we lost because of the fumble on the goal line. But nonetheless, he's he was a good player, and they started the year with him. But after the embarrassing loss to Duke, they kind of stopped and said, "All right, we need something to spark this offense." And their answer was Hendon Hooker, the new quarterback. He had played a couple snaps in games before the Miami game, but Miami was the first game that he got the start at quarterback. And since he has been the starter at quarterback, he has had 27 for 49 for 453 yards, 6 pass touchdowns, and also ran the ball for 115 yards and a touchdown in 2 games. So no interceptions, I don't know if there's any turnovers, period, but nonetheless, the point is that he's played well and he's given their offense a undeniable spark.
Exactly, and this is a guy that they have a little less tape on, I assume.
Yeah.
So that's definitely gonna add an interesting element, because they beat Miami, they put up 42 points against Miami, they put up 32 or 34, against Rhode Island.
Yeah.
They are on an upward trajectory, and it's going to be up to our defense to stifle them.
Yeah, I honestly, sorry to cut you off there, Ben. I honestly expected them to put more points up on Rhode Island. But I think part of the reason they may have put 42 up on Miami, not to take anything away from Virginia Tech's performance that day, was kind of like what you touched on, is that they didn't have any film on that kind of offense. This offense that they're running now is I think a better version of Georgia Tech, but similar to Georgia Tech, because the quarterback is similar. The quarterbacks we saw for Georgia Tech were the guys who were uncomfortable throwing the ball as much, but they really like using their legs, and they're great athletes. And Hooker is the same way. So Miami didn't have any film on that, and they got torched for it. But now we have a chance to kind of see that, and it's going to be a lot about discipline for the defense this week and being able to keep him in the pocket and make him throw the ball. Because to be honest with you, I don't really think he's been in the offense long enough to be comfortable with that yet.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of my early thoughts on that.
Yeah, but you say that Virginia Tech's offense somewhat mirrors what we saw with Georgia Tech, and I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, or it doesn't bode well for the Tar Heels, because even though we handled Georgia Tech pretty well, 38-22, I never felt like our defense, had the upper hand the whole time. I thought our offense kicked their defense's butt, but our defense, blew some coverages and allowed that quarterback to get out of the pocket plenty of times. Yeah,
and the offenses definitely, like I said, have similarities, but there are differences too, and I think a lot of the differences are what weapons Virginia Tech has as compared to what Georgia Tech had. Georgia Tech really didn't have, at least in my opinion, based off what I've seen, any receiver that is going to give you any nightmares. Virginia Tech doesn't really have a receiver that's going to give you a nightmare like a T. Higgins does. But they do have Damon Hazelton, who is a guy who is a big receiver who, as we know, we have had trouble with. He's not as big as a Sage Surratt, but he's 6'2", and I think 215 pounds. So he's a pretty big wide receiver. And he has kind of been the best one for them on the year. He doesn't lead the team in receptions, but he is probably their go-to guy, I'd say, the number one target. Which is, like I said, this defense, especially when you look at the depleted secondary, You're talking about big talented receivers. That's not a ticket for success.
Yeah, no kidding. So we'll just have to see whether this depleted secondary can hold up, whether we're going to get, some underdog Clemson game where they just play their minds, or play out of their minds, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Or just what we're going to get. We got to see. But now talk to me about the other side of the ball. What are we going to have to do offensively to take advantage of the generally more stout defense?
So what was UNC going to have to do on offense this week?
Yeah, what do we need to look out for on their defense?
Well, for our offense, I think the big key is this week we have to find a way to weather the early storm, and we also have to find a way to run the ball. Mm-hmm. Virginia Tech, it's interesting, Ben, and I know that we were probably going to get to this at some point, but you can't mention Virginia Tech's defense without talking about the historically great Bud Foster. And we talked about this in the season preview back in August, but this is his last year. The players sense it. They've been playing pretty good defense for the most part. A couple exceptions there. Duke would be the big one. But, this defense has evolved a lot over time. He's been there for a long time, Foster has. He's, goes back to the early days of Frank Beamer. And he runs a defense that revolves a lot around that it started kind of like a 4-4, but then it evolved to a 4-3. Now it's more of a 4-2-5, but it's still a 4-3. And what I mean by that is they make do out of that famous rover position. Mm-hmm. And that rover position is like that third linebacker or fifth defensive back. Can be either. And I know we were going to talk about this a little bit because he's suspended for the first half of our game due to a targeting call against Rhode Island. But their rover player, and his name is slipping my mind at this current moment.
What's it, Floyd?
Floyd, yes, Reggie Floyd. That's what it was. Reggie Floyd. He is I think he is one of the leading tacklers on the team, and he plays that rover position. And I know I keep mentioning this rover position, and the reason is because that is the most significant position on their team. That guy is kind of like the do-it-all Swiss Army knife.
Well, absolutely. I mean, he's a captain for the team. Yeah. He started 20 of their last 21 games, so that's a huge loss in the first half that we definitely have to take advantage of, right?
Yeah, and
the coaches are definitely going to understand that.
Of course.
They might air the ball out. Who knows?
But the thing is, it's interesting you say that because I think the way we take advantage of him not being in there is not by throwing it deep. It's by running the ball. Mm-hmm. He's not that position. Based off what I've seen about Bud Foster's scheme, is not out there to really cause havoc in the passing game. It's to really give that those linebackers an extra guy to stuff the run. And he's when they don't play, Georgia Tech obviously doesn't play the triple option anymore. But this rover position became famous for Virginia Tech because of Georgia Tech's option. It was the position to stop that option. Mm-hmm. And it's still very, very helpful in the run game. So I think where we exploit him not being in there is we try to run outside the tackles a little bit. Virginia Tech is a good team up front, but they're not the best team that we've played up front by any means. And if we can have any success running outside against a team like Clemson, I think we need to exploit that while we can before he gets back in there and he can kind of quarterback the defense a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about it before. The running backs are one of the strengths of this offense and this team as a whole. So they can definitely start feeding Carter, start feeding Javonte. And just, establish the run. Yeah. I think that's going to be huge. Have that Virginia Tech quarterback who hasn't had too much in-game experience have to play from behind.
Yeah, you definitely don't want that, especially on the road, right? So we don't want to put Sam in a situation where he's, having to play quarterback on the road against the best defensive coordinator in the country. Mm-hmm. I know they don't have the best defensive players in the country, but as far as complicated looks go, this is about as tough a test you're going to get. Yeah. So Sam is definitely going to have a lot to think about. So we need to try to, run the ball best we can to keep it off of his shoulders. Because if it comes down to us having to throw the ball, 50 times to win this game, I think that Virginia Tech will have enough in their defensive playbook to throw at him to where he will make a mistake. Or they will force a mistake, rather. Mm-hmm. So we don't want that to happen.
Well, I mean, we've seen so far this season, as awesome as Sam's been, he's not completely What am I trying to say?
Immune to turnovers?
That's exactly the word I'm looking for. He's not immune to making these mistakes that you'd expect from a true freshman.
Yeah.
So as long as he can maintain his poise, there's no reason that he can't go and shred that defense. It's going to be interesting to see if the coaching staff, continues on that path that's kind of they established during Georgia Tech of him throwing the ball 50 times. I don't think he even necessarily had to in that game.
Yeah.
But, man, they just had him flinging the rock.
Yeah, it's part of the game plan. And, you and I have talked about how that may not be a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
He can throw the ball. He's got a really good deep ball. We've got receivers that can make plays. So I think that needs to be a part of our game plans. But I'll say one other thing, too, Ben, about this game. If that is going to be part of our game plan to come out and sling the ball around, we're going to have to be very aware of Caleb Farley. Virginia Tech's lead cornerback. He is going to be in the NFL one day. I can promise you that by looking at him. I remember last year, he was apparently, and I did not know this, he was a redshirt freshman last year, and he basically locked up Anthony Ratliff-Williams all night.
Damn.
And Ratliff, as you guys know, was a really, really good receiver for us last year, despite our offensive struggles. So, and then now he's having a really good year. As you mentioned, Miles Wilfork has got 3 interceptions on the year. Caleb Farley is the one that is tied with him for 3 on the year. Now, he's played every game, so that's a little different. But still, he's a ball-hawking corner. And in that Bud Foster defense, those corners are responsible for the deep halves of their field because that one of those safeties does play up a lot. It ends up being almost like a, I don't know. It could be. It's. I don't know. I don't want to talk too much about the scheme, but basically Farley's responsibility is going to be one deep half of the field. One thing I've noticed watching some of their film is that he and the other corner don't really switch a lot.
So they kind of have their halves.
Yeah, it's a similar. It's not as much zone as the Seahawks ran in 2013 to 14, but it's similar to the way that Sherman lined up in that defense, where he was just on the right side all the time. Sherman wasn't going to follow anybody. Mm-hmm. It was just that cover 3 zone all the time. It's not quite that like that for Virginia Tech, but Farley in the other corner will stay on their sides, and Farley plays that right side, which is typically the best receiver, right? Because right-hand quarterbacks like throw that way. But so he's a guy we really got to pay attention to. I imagine that he will be on. I don't know. Daz will be in the slot most likely, so I could see him on Bo Corrales some. I could see him on Diami as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, they're not going to have him travel with say Diami the entire game. So, but at the same time, that makes it possible to exploit that kind of zone that these corners are playing in.
Yeah, and I don't anticipate him to follow anybody around, but it wouldn't shock me if they did, because Virginia Tech is probably the closest defense in the ACC to being a game plan kind of specific team.
Yeah.
Not many college teams are like that, but they definitely show a lot of looks, a lot of coverages, a lot of stunts. It's hard to really prepare for everything that you might get.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we kind of wrap up this preview?
Yeah, their defense is probably still safe to say the strength of the team. Mm-hmm. This is going to come down to us being able to establish the run on them, make them defend the whole field. We don't want to get into a thing where Sam is having to drop back and throw the ball a bunch, and they're able to dial up pressure and stunts and give him confusing looks, because I guarantee you we will turn the ball over if that happens. But yeah, outside of that, I think that pretty much wraps it up. That's what we're going to see on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, according to ESPN's Football Power Index, UNC has a 69.6% chance of winning the game, which seems oddly high, especially when you just compare the statistics, you look at the strength of schedule, things like that. This Virginia Tech team, they have a better record than us. They're 4-2.
Yeah.
They're 1-2 in the conference, and we're 2-1 in the conference.
Yeah.
But this is no joke of a team, and I think we currently have the line by about 3 or 3.5 points, something like that. But I don't think there's going to be any walk in the park. Definitely a harder game than Georgia Tech was.
Yeah, and kind of to your point, that they've played a little bit of an easier schedule than us.
Mm-hmm.
We've had the toughest schedule in the ACC, and some of their wins are against teams like Furman, Old Dominion, and Rhode Island. So 3 of their 4 wins are against teams that really aren't much.
Mm-hmm.
Miami's the only one in there that you could say is a really serviceable team.
Yeah, the only problem is that's what we were saying about Appalachian State and Wake Forest going into it.
I think Wake and App State are better than all 3 of the teams I just mentioned that Virginia Tech has beaten. App and Wake are no joke. Obviously, they've been in in the top 25 in the past 2 weeks, so that's a little different.
No, I'm just talking about how they hadn't played too many great teams prior to playing us.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that's true. But yeah, I mean, you're right. They're 4-2. I think maybe giving us a 70% chance to win is a little generous, especially where we're playing. Mm-hmm. But who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, hopefully UNC faithful shows out. I know you'll be at that game, so hopefully there's a bit of Carolina blue up in the crowd.
Yeah, I'll be making the trip for that one. So I'm excited to get to see the game there and hope we can pull off the upset.
Great.
Not an upset, but I hope we can pull off the road win. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, exactly, and keep this little win streak we have of one game intact. Get above 500. I think that's going to be the most important. But let's talk about the rest of the schedule. We've played 6 games. We have 6 games to go. Minus a potential conference championship game and then a potential bowl game. Those are both big ifs that we have to start playing real well, real consistent to get to. But right now we're not in a terrible position. We are tied for first with Virginia and Duke at 2-1 in the ACC Coastal. So, of course, you just have to win the ACC Coastal, and you're going to play Clemson, and you can almost say with 100% certainty it's Clemson that's going to represent the ACC Atlantic in the conference championship game. But we really could have this rematch, especially considering we still have our game with Duke coming up. And we still have our game with Virginia coming up. Those are back-to-back weeks following Virginia Tech.
Yeah, both at home, too. And that's, I think, really important. Arguably the 2 toughest games left on our schedule. I know Pittsburgh is good, and NC State has a really good defense. And Virginia Tech has a really good defense, and it'll be a tough game. But Virginia's been in the top 25 for most of the season now. They just lost, so they'll probably be out of it, but they're still that caliber. Yeah. And Duke has had a lot of big wins recently.
Yeah. This is a little bit of getting off track, but did you know the Pitt game is a ESPN night game?
I didn't know that. Isn't it like a Thursday?
Whatever the 14th of November is.
I think that may be like a
That must be.
Thursday.
I can't imagine us being the 8 p.m. game on ESPN on a Saturday.
That wouldn't make too much sense. Yes, the 14th is a Thursday.
Okay, cool.
So, it'll be and we've played Pittsburgh for the Thursday night. I remember 2 years ago when we got, I think it was our 3rd win of the year and our last win of the year in 2017. We played at Pittsburgh and got a win on Thursday night. So, we've definitely played them on Thursday night before. It'll be a good game.
Yeah. Oh, well, before we get to Pittsburgh, let's talk about Duke and UVA a little bit. And really, we're not going to get too in-depth because we're going to have, our own preview for each one of these games as they come up. Right. But looking at those 6 last games, which are at Virginia Tech versus Duke versus Virginia, at Pitt versus Mercer, and at NC State.
Man, what are you thinking about that?
Well, I honestly think that we can take 4, if not 5 of those games. Okay. I think we're going to beat Pitt because even our worst teams somehow manage to beat Pitt every year.
It'll be tough.
Yeah, but it's going to be tough, but I think we can get Pitt. Mercer is essentially a gimme. I think they're an FCS team.
I don't think they're Division I. So.
Well, they have to be Division I, but they might be FCS, which is like the lower caliber of Division I. Yeah. Virginia Tech's not a gimme. It's really, really tough because this is a team that can be hot or cold. But I think we can go 4-2 over the last half of the season, and I think we can still win the Coastal with that.
Yeah, I think we can too. If we lose 2 of them, that we'll definitely have to rely on, some other things happening, obviously. But I think Virginia is the biggest threat to us. Obviously, that'll be the toughest game. I'm going to say I think Ben Mercer's a gimme, right? Mm-hmm. I think I could see us losing or winning every one of these games.
Yeah, that's the issue. It makes our lives hard.
Yeah, it's tough, but I'd like to say I think we can get 4 out of those.
What do you think are 2 hardest games remaining?
The 2 hardest ones remaining to me, I think, are going to be against Virginia, and then because of the nature of the game itself, NC State on the road.
Yeah, I was actually going to say exactly the same 2. Going to NC State for the last game of the week, who knows what's going to be on the line for that last game? We might be sitting at 5-6, and need that game to make a bowl.
Yeah, we could be. And, I don't know what their record is right now either, but I know that they could be fighting for something along those lines too.
Oh, we could both be completely winless, and it would still be like a seriously tense game with NC State.
Yeah, and they always like to play us hard. So, they've had our number in recent years, and, it's, a lot of factors there. But, yeah, they're going to have a lot for us. I definitely think that game will be tough. Virginia will be the toughest, even though we are playing here, which is good. Duke will be probably the third toughest on that one, and then you can toss up Pitt or Virginia Tech on which one you want to put after that.
Yeah.
Both of those are going to be, I think, equally as tough. Maybe Pitt a little bit tougher because it's a Thursday after, but we have the bye in between Virginia and Pitt. I'm noticing that Virginia is November 2nd, and Pittsburgh's not till the 14th. So we're not playing the Saturday, Thursday quick turnaround.
We'll have actually really nice.
Yeah, we'll have the full week there. So I don't know. Take your pick on that. That's I think you could have a lot of different conversations about which one of those would be tougher.
Yeah, I mean, let's just say we were a lot more confident in our picks at the beginning of the season because we didn't realize how on and off this team can be.
Right.
Like I said, in all likelihood, and this is probably what I have the most confidence of saying, is we're probably going to win one we shouldn't win, and we're probably going to lose one that we shouldn't have lost over the second half of this season. So we just got to hope it doesn't end up kicking us in the butt.
But I'm going to tell you, man, winning this one Saturday would be just huge.
Oh, I mean, if we get us up over 500, it could really help us in the Coastal standings.
And I feel like it would take... Not that it makes anything less important, but it would take pressure off of us, going into that Duke game at home, because that's obviously a rivalry game, and we don't want to lose the front end of that because Virginia will be extremely tough. So winning this game would, I think, alleviate a lot of mental pressure and also give us a boost. Finally, being over 500 for the first time since 2016.
Jeez. Yeah.
So Mitch Trubisky was in Carolina blue last time we were above 500 in football. So
that's just why we just play. We play like we should be better than our record indicates. But again, that just harkens back to the whole hot and cold. And like you said, it all starts with this win at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, one game at a time, right?
Yep, one game at a time, man. I mean, anything can happen any given Saturday, any given Sunday. You know the saying, right? Mm-hmm. But this will be a pretty evenly matched game. I think we are a little bit more talented than they are at this current moment. I really do think we are. At least our offense is more talented than their offense. Their defense may have a little bit more talent, and partly because of our injuries.
Yeah.
But it'll be I hate the term toss-up, but it could be a toss-up.
Yeah, but toss-up's also another good way to say it's going to be a really great game.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for it.
So for your prediction here, what is the one thing that you think we have to do to win this game at Blacksburg?
Man, I just think that we need to scheme something up on the defensive side of the ball to make up for the injuries that we have in our defensive back. So that's whether having some of our more agile linebackers like Surratt play a little deeper and start covering some guys. But I don't know. I didn't love what I saw during the Georgia Tech game, and I'm just a little worried that these injuries are going to start getting to us and that Clemson was a little bit of a fluke. So as long as we can just keep the ball in front of our defensive backs' eyes, not let anything over the top, I think that's going to set us up for success. Because, again, I do think our defensive line is one of our strengths.
Yeah, I agree with you. Crawford and Strobridge, man, we cannot talk about how good they've been.
Man, if one of them goes down, that's bad news bears all around.
Yeah, they are definitely bright spots for us. For me, man, I think the biggest thing we have to do is, well, for starters, we have to weather the early storm.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech playing at home, they're going to come out fast. So we have to weather that. If we can do that, we'll be okay. It'll go down to that back and forth probably after that. But schematically, we've got to establish some sort of run, preferably an outside run, whenever one of their best defensive players is out of the game for the first half. And then also our defense, has to keep Hooker in the pocket. Mm-hmm. Similar to what we talked about with James Graham for Georgia Tech. We have to keep them in the pocket, make him throw the ball, give him some looks he's not used to, try to force some turnovers, but don't let him just use his pure athletic ability to beat you, because that's what he did against Miami.
Yeah,
he just ran all over them, and they didn't have an answer for it. So we've had a chance to look at that film. We know what he likes to do. We know what he's comfortable with. I say we go out there and try to think of ways to make him uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. This is a newer starter, doesn't have a ton of experience, so if we can just make him uncomfortable in that pocket, we should be good to go. But following that, what's your score prediction for this game? Are we going to leave Blacksburg with a win?
I'm going to be – dude, I went back and forth on this one. I went back and forth on this one. I could see it going – I think this could be the closest hard-to-pick game we've had all year, to be honest with you. There's so many factors here. But I'm going to go with the Tar Heels in a low-scoring game, 20-16.
Okay.
They will be tough on defense. We will probably turn the ball over a little bit, but I think we can force some turnovers from them. Because Sam, I think, is obviously the better quarterback. You can look at any statistic and get that conclusion, but they're both inexperienced a little bit, right? So both defenses are going to probably cause some problems, but I think eventually we'll be able to make maybe one or two more plays than them down the stretch and win the game by about 4 points.
Yeah, man, I hope so. Again, like you said, this is a really tough game to choose. If you're into sports betting, I would not put my money on this one, especially with the line being at 3.5 points, because I don't think UNC is going to cover that, even if we do win. So I think it's going to be even closer than you said. I think it's going to be about 21-20.
Okay.
Not high scoring at all. I think the defenses are going to clamp down a little bit. We'll win on a missed field goal. All the Virginia Tech fans will go home sad.
It could be that way. I mean, it really could be a barn burner like that. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But I hope we are able to be. We're able to be the team that makes the final play, and I think it'll be a fourth quarter game for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, basically all our games are fourth quarter games. So
yeah,
you can kind of expect that, man. You got to keep your blood pressure down the first 3 quarters because that fourth is coming.
Yep, but really, I think the team that wins is going to be the one that makes those plays in the second and third quarter when no one's really paying attention. It's like the first quarter everybody's paying attention, fourth quarter obviously everybody's excited to see what happens. But it's going to be whoever can make those plays when kind of nobody's watching, so to speak, that are going to decide this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know you guys are all excited. We're super excited. But as always, make sure to give us a follow on Twitter. And then subscribe to us on YouTube, which is where we put all the podcasts in addition to Spotify and iTunes. But this is going to be a really, really, really great game. I'm super excited, Zach.
Yeah, me too. And guys, let us know what you think of our predictions and stuff. I mean, we're trying to do our best to look at everything, but there's going to be things that maybe we miss that you guys see about the games for both our team and then the team we're playing. So be sure to interact with us whenever you want to on Twitter and let us know what you think.
Yeah, and when we get our predictions super wrong and we end up kicking their butts or they kick our butts, make sure to let us know.
Yeah, for sure. We're all about learning from each other, right? So. Always love talking to you guys about it.
Yeah, so as always, it's been your hosts, Ben and Zach, and this has been the Heel Deal Podcast. It's been a good one, Zach.
We'll talk to you next week, guys, and in the meantime, go to Hell Duke.